And I'll check again too once you've done that.
Yep. It's in the process of setting it up. So in about 10 seconds, I'm thinking it will be live. And you'll be able to see it up in that top corner, in the left-hand corner. It'll say live YouTube.
I was gonna say, I see it there now.
Okay, then that means we're up.
And about. Do you guys have that feature because you've logged in as something else? Where do you see that it says it's live on YouTube?
I have mine set right now so that I have like little pictures on the top, and then whoever's primary talking is in the middle. So right now you're in the center, April. And on your screen, up in the upper left-hand corner, that's where I'm seeing it. It says, it almost looks like a little CNN bug because it's live on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on my cell phone and on the Scarborough Schools website on the front page, there's a link to click to get to the YouTube channel. And if you do that, you can see us live. Yep. But if you try to listen to them both at the same time, it's confusing and overwhelming.
Right, you'll get like an echo.
Right,
yeah, I'm sure. I have like a little green lock, and then I have a little eye in a circle.
Where's that?
But I don't have anything that says anything about being live on YouTube.
Huh. Oh, I see the green lock.
Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm on a Mac. I don't know. It might be a little different.
I'm on a PC and I have it.
It's not important. It's just one of those things that, like, as we all do this, like the more times we do it, we're learning, like, not everybody's interface looks the same.
Right.
And so I don't have what you guys have.
Okay.
I took a photo, and at the end of it, I'll send it to you so that you can see what I saw.
Nice. Okay. Great. So, Alicia, would it be helpful if I project the agenda for the meeting?
Yeah, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
All right. I thought I had pulled it up. Let's look.
Okay, so I'm going to, I'm reviewing our protocols. We've got 5 participants currently, so that's just the 5 of us. And so that means there won't be any questions through through Zoom.
1 second. I'm not in the right spot. Here we go. All right, so here's our agenda. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
You. I'm just trying to minimize my screen.
And before we kick off, do you want the updates from Ann Chapman?
Sure.
They have the language for BEDH is with the attorneys. So they're going through that right now, which is great. And she hopes we'll have that beginning of next week.
Okay.
For JLF, I'll read it to you verbatim and then I can just send it over. I'm recommending that you use our newest sample JLF along with JLF-E because there's new language added. The policy you're using does not include some of the more recent language on abuse and neglect stemming from the change in school attendance all last September. And then she has answers to the questions in the draft. The volunteers are included because the main DOE included them in their 2018 policy. They're not specifically identified as mandatory reporters under the law, but she thinks there's a benefit to including them as reporters here in our updated policy. Regarding the frequency of the child abuse training for students and whether parents can opt out, MDOE's policy specifies that the education covers pre-K through grade 5 and that it be appropriate in scope and sequence. And although it doesn't specifically say it must take place each year, that can be inferred from other language. In regards to opting out, there's no provision in the MDOE policy or law. Regarding what internal policies are referenced in the section on employee violations, this will be based on specific misconduct and could be the staff conduct with students policy, technology policies, discrimination or harassment. definitely not to include them in the list of policies, but looking into possible misconduct by an employee should always be assessing what policies might have been violated. I know that was a lot.
Can you share that email with the group?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so she wants us to put it back into their format and to include some of their new language. So yes, it's on its way right now.
I remember I was talking with people in my division about the school truancy issue, I think is what she's referring to. I probably have a different opinion on that than she does, I think.
Okay.
Just to fill you in terms of, I know in regards to JLF, we have been working on the mandatory training for staff. And now here we are in the world of virtual school. But I did have contact with Sexual Abuse Response Services, and they're actually putting together a 1-hour online training that we're going to be able to access and have our staff use as professional development, even though we're in this current state. So I was pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I just want to be clear. When I looked at YouTube, there were no members of the public viewing, but if anybody does want to make a comment or ask a question, that can be done through email while the meeting is occurring at publiccomment@scarboroughschools.org. And at that point, the statement will be read aloud during the comment period. Okay. So, boy, I was confused when I was sending out those emails for JLCB related to the immunization of students. And so the statutory changes are scheduled to go into effect September of 2021. So that's not this school year, it's next school year. What are your thoughts about sort of putting this ahead of us so that we can plan for it, but also so that we're on top of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely have some time. That being said, I think we should have a plan moving forward. I know that, you know, my last 2 meetings with the nurses have really been consumed by coronavirus. We had talked to, you know, we had at our 2 meetings ago was when this was really first coming on the landscape. And then our last meeting before we went virtual, we actually had Rich Kindlin come to the meeting and talk about the intersection between what the community was doing and how we could partner with them. And I continue to meet with the nurses on a weekly basis virtually. But again, right now, our efforts have really been kind of laser focused on, you know, this current epidemic. That being said, I think I can certainly redirect into some regular business. I think it would probably be helpful, and everybody would feel a sense of a little bit of routine if we could go back to like, what are some things that we're working on?
Well, Diane, when do you want to do a recheck on that? Do you want to wait until, do school nurses work during the summer?
They do not. They're on a teacher contract, so they have the same contract. But again, I'm, you know, so prior to moving to remote learning, we were meeting once a month. I'm now meeting with them right now once a week. So I certainly can put this on our agenda for this week and say, you know, can we take the next couple of weeks to kind of go through this and make some recommendations so that I would feel really confident by our next meeting that I could have, you know, some more specific feedback from them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm typing on on my own agenda, just so you know if there's a delay, just what I'm doing, Diane. 'Cause there's this to you. Okay, so next is ICA review proposed school calendar. I was thinking about that today. Is there any possibility that coronavirus will impact the proposed calendar?
Oh, no, I mean, some people kind of speculated that it might, but either my feeling is we're going to maybe be out longer. Not sure if we'll be back at all this year. It's hard to tell. But all those days will be waived by DOE, is my understanding. And with the proposed calendar, if I remember right, we had a meeting, a workshop on that, and there was quite a bit of discussion about when to start school and how one of the schools did some testing early on those first couple of days, and there may have been another board member that felt, gee, you know, what about the grades 3 through 5? Wouldn't they like something like that as well? So as far as regional school calendars, I haven't heard much about that. Have you, Diane?
So our calendar is within the statute for the regional calendars. I think that we had 4 days. You can't be off more than 5 days totally. And I think that we were within 4. And so as long as we don't make a lot of changes in terms of like when our full start date would be, I think the things that were still up for discussion for you as a board in terms of, you know, whether you're going to have a different start date for kindergarten or grades 1 and 2 or grades 3, that's not necessarily changing the big overall regional calendar, because we're not talking about shifting when those high school dates change. So I think unless we were really going to go off script and consider something different at this late date, K to 12, that we should still be well within that statute, because we had all worked as regional groups during the month of January to make sure that we were in line with one another.
Okay.
So I think the piece that really, you know, that brought us back to this was one, that recognition that there is a policy in place for the review of the school calendar. And so that's why I did bump it back to you folks. And then the second piece is that, you know, just a wonder, it seems like what wasn't really fleshed out in the meeting, in the workshop that Sandy just mentioned, was that piece about staggering the opening dates. And I just wonder, at the current time, given the situation that we're in right now and the flexibility that parents are having to display right now, is that something that we're not thinking the same about that we might have been thinking a month ago?
Agreed. Well, let me ask you this. Has anybody received, so you're right, absolutely right. The reason why we're doing this now, which seems a little bit backwards, is because I think you brought it to our attention of that ICA required us to make a recommendation, and so to the board. And so I'm wondering, one of the things that we were supposed to do is consider feedback from staff, students, and community members. We really didn't have a lot of that at the board level, and I'm wondering if since that workshop you've received any input.
I have not received any input to date about that.
Neither have I.
No.
Okay. I agree with you, Diane. I don't know how others feel, but I think that there's so much going on right now that the best thing that we can do for our community is to try not to make any drastic changes with things that are within our control, because there's so much that, you know, impacting them that's outside of our control. I'm interested, April and Leanne, how you're thinking about that.
I share your sentiment exactly. I think given that the first version of that has rolled out, given that it is similar to what we did this past year, I'm comfortable with the way that we've been doing it, and I don't think that now's the time to discuss big changes.
I would agree completely. I think the principals seemed pretty, they were behind this. They felt that it worked really well. And I think to upend that apple cart would really not be in anyone's best interest right now.
Okay. So are we prepared then as a committee that our recommendation would be that the calendar should pass?
Yeah,
that would
be that's my feeling. Yeah.
So if we want it to pass as it stands currently, I can ask Kelly to put that on the next board meeting agenda.
Where we haven't sent out the agendas for Thursday night, do you think it's too late to add this into that?
I think it's going out right now, Leanne.
Oh, okay.
I just got the communications in between finance and this meeting. I just gave the final okay on the district communication letter that we were going to send. So
okay.
If Kelly hasn't sent it yet, she could be sending it any minute. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, our other option is to adjust the agenda, or we wait until the 16th. I mean, either way, I don't think there's no harm, no foul in either direction.
I think either way.
It might be helpful for people to have sort of the sense of normalcy sooner rather than later, in terms of this is when school's planning to start next year, and
yeah.
to actually hear that, just because of the number of unknowns with this school year. And so if we can give them that without a delay, I think that would, from my perspective at least, that would feel good. I don't know if it will help or not, or if it's just sort of the psychological aspect of it, but to me, thinking about planning feels good.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So Leanne, that email hasn't been sent yet. At least I haven't gotten it. So if you wanted to text Kelly and ask her to make that adjustment, I think that you might still have time.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're a little bit ahead of schedule. We have the review of IKB, which is the homework policy. One of the things that I'm mindful of is everything that you have going on right now at the school. And so I'm not sure if that's something that you've had an opportunity to discuss at the leadership level.
Yeah. Again, I appreciate you recognizing that, because our efforts, for the past, I think we've been in this mode for a couple of weeks, but, we're thinking about being in this mode prior to that. So we really haven't dug in and discussed that as a leadership council today.
Okay. From your perspective, I think, my thoughts are that the rest of your school year is probably going to be invested in this new way of learning remotely. So what are your thoughts about coming back to this? When realistically do you think we should consider that?
I mean, I think if it's something that you want input on, we can definitely do that. I think, right now, we're still having our regular leadership council meetings. We're really digging into the budget process, as you all are very well aware. Tomorrow's meeting, for the most part, is going to be finishing planning for this budget workshop, as well as making sure that we're prepared to present our distance learning plan at the school board meeting on Thursday. So, we have been unfortunately needing to prioritize things in a different way than we might have otherwise expected.
Okay. Well, I guess some of my thoughts are, should we try to work this as a committee and get some topics or some expectations and when I say expectations, I don't mean that we would be making the decisions, but I think just sort of identifying the areas that we might consider putting into a homework policy and doing some of the legwork so that the leadership team could then fill in the blanks when it becomes time? Or do you think that our time would be better spent to try to look at policies that we could work on at a committee level that doesn't require the input of our staff level experts?
I see both. I mean, I think the people in the field, this is kind of a thorny issue sometimes with parents and even staff. So part of me feels like we need staff input into this. And ultimately, the board then can look at those suggestions and recommendations. But I think it could go either way. I mean, I think as a board, you could do a draft and then we could bring it back to the leadership council as something to work from.
Okay.
It's really hard. I mean, I've been around this one, another district, and to be honest with you, and this sounds terrible, but sometimes it's really a challenge, K through 12, to get consistency, even if you have the best policy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say that because it sounds negative, but it's a challenge sometimes to really try take a building and make sure that people are really following that policy. And there's so many different feelings about this, even from a parent's point of view.
Right.
So again, I'm all behind this because I think the more consistent we can get, the better.
Well, I don't know how, April and Leanne, I don't know how you're feeling about sort of homework at this point. I mean, everything's so different right now in terms of how we're doing business. And for me, I feel a little bit overwhelmed. But I'm happy to undertake it if we want to do it sort of. I don't even necessarily think we would have to do it as a draft versus just sort of identify topics maybe, or that we'd like to see addressed, and then maybe when things settle down the summer or in the fall or something, then there would be a skeletal outline. So I think we could do that, or I think we could table it, and I think that both of those are reasonable solutions. What do you think?
I will just say that I've got plenty of opinions during the last week or so about homework and class time and expectations. So not what I thought they were going to be. I wish they were a little bit more. I'll just put it out there for the high school. I think it would probably be good if we were going to address this, if we did come up with some directional information, rather than saying let's just wait until Colt has a moment to breathe, or we can completely table it and still come back with some sort of a skeleton to bring forward to them based on the direction that the board wants this to go. And I really think that that's really where we come into this. This is the direction that we want the district to go, and present that back up. And then if there's concerns or discussion, they can come back at that point to say, no, this is not what we would like to see happen, and we can work from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's worthwhile for this group to consider, you know, as you think about what you might want a homework policy to read, how does that link into the core beliefs that the district has, right, or that the board has for the students in our community, just as a way to really be clear about how we're thinking about that.
That's a good point.
Diane, how do I get my picture back? I hit something and I don't know why.
And did you hit the camera stop video on the bottom left?
Oh. Thank
Here
you.
you are. Oh, I saw you for a second.
Yeah. Oh,
You're gone again. There you are.
thank you.
April, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I think that I think that distance learning will change maybe the way people feel about the at-home expectations. Like I think for me personally, like this experience is going to change, you know, how I view what the expectations are for my kids outside of class. And I don't know yet how they're going to change, but I just foresee me having some very different views maybe on, you know, things like homework that I did prior to this experience. And so it's hard for me to kind of tap into how I think we should move forward with this, because everything right now is moving and changing. But I do think that there is a lot to be said for us coming up with kind of a set of core something, whether it's a skeleton and not necessarily a policy, but just what are the core components that we would like to see, and having that be the framework that, you know, we send that to our professionals and they work within that framework, and like Diane said, align it with kind of our district values to go from there. And that way it doesn't feel like it's coming from us. It feels like it's, you know, kind of, this is what the board would like to see. And now you know, take this feedback and kind of help us bring it up from where you guys are.
Right.
I haven't even had a second to look at, admittedly, I know our homework was to look at other districts and see what their policies are, and I would still like the opportunity to do that. In terms of discussing it now versus tabling it, I think the approach, for me, the approach is the same, whether we do it now or whether we table it. And so it's really just a matter of, is there something more pressing for us that we need to be doing as a group, where it would be okay to kind of put this down the line a little.
Okay, so I think that makes sense. So business as usual just doesn't seem like business as usual right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because so many of these policies, we want to get the input of the nurses, the social workers, the leadership team, and they're busy putting out fires right now. So,
yep.
I guess What are your thoughts about policy committee moving forward in general right now?
Are there any like nitty gritty like tasks that we could be doing that wouldn't that wouldn't otherwise be high on our list? And that way we could kind of at least still be making a contribution, but not necessarily adding to anybody else's work.
So can you see like I scrolled down, can you
Mhm.
see these other policies?
The budget stuff is something that we need to address, and that's something that probably doesn't need much input from anybody but maybe Kate. And I'm not sure that we would need a ton of her time. So that, I mean, it's not my favorite thought to be working on.
Well, that's right. Like,
Ugh.
you want to talk about the budget at policy now too, Alicia? Like, should we not talk about the budget enough today?
So like the ones that I've highlighted here, those are the like what you're thinking in terms of Alicia?
Leanne, what's the one that we really need to change?
DBJ.
That's not the one with the timeline though, right? What's the one with the timeline that's off?
Oh, that's DB.
DB.
Yeah, but DBJ is the one that brought all of this to the forefront when we were moving some monies around.
Yep.
DB is the timeline, and I think that's one that we really need to take a look at for, again, not this year because it's come and gone, but next year, just making sure we're on the right timelines. And, to your point, it really isn't going to take a lot of time. I think it's really a matter of making sure that Sandy and Diane have the timelines baked into their processing so that we're meeting them.
Yeah.
That's probably the bigger piece, and that is something we could be doing for our next meeting. And I agree. I think that, while we want this to be business as usual, it kind of isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the world is pretty much upside down at the moment.
Yeah.
But if we can get through these pieces, I think that's a great idea.
Having just come from finance too, and Alicia can weigh in on this, Kate kind of went over the impacts of what distance learning is going to do to our budget this year and what the potential costs associated with that are going to be versus what the potential savings are going to be. And so it's entirely possible that we are going to have to do some budget line transfers and do some maneuvering in the budget that is completely atypical. And so it would be good to review those policies and make sure that, at the very least, we have a good understanding of what, may or may not need to happen.
Okay. So I'm thinking that to do the budget stuff, it might be helpful to work as a group, doing like how we usually do we're not gonna be able to put it up on the projector like we do, but share a screen and sort of review the statutory language and whatever.
Yeah, I actually think this platform lends itself well to the way we run our meetings usually.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
I was gonna say, I can actually see better this way.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
I'm having a little bit of a hard time.
You should have seen Kate's document at the last meeting. Diane's running this document, so it's big.
Yeah, I'm glad. So I feel like maybe the homework piece, we could sort of do throw something up on Google Docs and we could share it and put thoughts in or something and come back to it at a later time. But at our next meeting, we could sort of start to work on the budget policies and go through them and compare. I guess we're going to have to compare the charter and the statute, right? Is really what we need to be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts for timeline for returning for our next meeting? I guess,
Um,
I'm looking to all of you for what you have going on, given that
well,
everything's.
I was actually going to send this right back to you in April. Knowing that you are both on finance, and that's usually the busiest time for us all. What is your schedule going to be like? Do you have room to meet again soon? Do you want a little more time because of everything that's going on with finance?
So our next finance meeting we scheduled for April 27th. That being said, if you take a look at the calendar, we're all going to be pretty much engrossed in finance for the next couple of weeks as we review the budget.
We really are.
So what if we skip April and then just meet in May? Would that be good?
Yeah,
That's fine.
Of course, I don't remember all of those finance dates, and I don't think they're all in our calendar yet. Do you guys remember when they are?
I know there's one the 3rd. Hold on.
It's skipping to May,
Yeah.
Alicia. I don't think, let me see here. Skipping to May, we just have, like the budget. What do I have on here? We have a town council school board workshop scheduled for May 6th. But other than that, I don't have anything related to the budget. And then second reading with us at our normal school board meeting on the 7th.
So if we do mid to late May, we'll be good.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at that point, we will have approved the second reading, and I don't know what budget outreach is going to look like this year. Normally, our calendars are pretty full with that for May, but I can't imagine how many Zooms I'm going to sit on and interact with the general public. I don't know. I don't know if people want to do that or not.
What day is today? Monday?
Yes.
Are we still doing
no,
Monday?
today's when? Today, what the hell is today? Monday.
Today's Monday.
Thanks, Leanne.
Sorry.
Day
They
long.
all blend together.
Yes.
All right. Well, what about May 18th?
Let's
Do it.
do it.
So let's do a 4:30 to 6 if that works for you. And we'll do a little bit longer to really try to dig in on that and get some work done.
Yep, I like
Sounds
it.
great.
And then that'll give us some time to sort of acclimate.
Oh yeah, we'll be pros by then.
Yeah.
What time do you want to do that?
4:30 to 6.
Already.
Oh, hey, look, I don't know how this just happened, but it might have worked. Hold on. You may have just gotten an invitation.
But
Yep, I think it worked. Oh, almost. I got to fix one thing. I don't want to at the time.
Oh yeah, there it
Thank
is.
you.
You know, when I put it in the phone, all of a sudden it popped up and it said, "Do you want to invite 6 attendees?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
well, remember I did that with something weird.
You synced us your whole calendar. You started adding us to all your events.
Yeah, that's a great feature until it's not.
Right.
Oh my God. All right. Well, that's great. Thank you. So that'll give us some time to just sort of settle in and let the new normal be normal.
Yep. I
Right.
think that works.
Anybody have anything else?
No, not that's policy related, but I always have other things.
Well, yeah. Well, you could call me for that.
I think I might.
All right. Well, I don't know how to. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to end it then.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Bye,
all.
guys.
Everyone.
Thanks, Alicia.
Bye.
Night, guys.
Bye.